Hi everybody, I hope you're well, I hope you're happy, and I hope you might spend a little time with us here in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordo. Peter Clayton's behind the camera. Pete, can you show some pictures of the new studio? This is in the making, mind you. This is this studio that will enable us to do everything we used to do on 5DN and 5AD and 2GB and at the very end 5AA, and it's so compact, so simple, and it does exactly the same thing. And the sound, I hope, will impress you. I'll go through it all as soon as we get the thing operational so that you can tune in, and we're working on having a live show. We'll have some podcasts, obviously, but then we will lead up to having a live show. And then who knows? I mean, we could possibly go live with it every day of the week. I don't know. We'll see. We'll just play it by ear. We'll play it by ear. July the 12th, before we get into the news of the day, Charles Rolls, British aviator and automaker, who co-founded Rolls-Royce, he dies in a plane crash at the age of 32. He was the first British person to do so. Oh, I see. It was before the First World War, because they were certainly having plenty of plane crashes in the First World War, 1418, First World War. But this was in 1910. Okay. George Eastman, 1854, American inventor, Kodak camera, founder of the Eastman Kodak Company. He was born in 1854, he died in 1932. HMS Endeavour, captained by Captain James Cook on this very day, he in the company of Joseph Banks, 1771, returns from its first voyage to the Pacific after 2 years. Same day, 1776, Captain James Cook departs Plymouth. England helming. Now, it's interesting the way they're twisting the language, isn't it? Helming means steering, I suppose. Instead of captaining the boat, he's helming it. It's funny, isn't it? Helming HMAS Resolution, or HMS Resolution, beginning his third and final trip to the Pacific, 1771, 1776. Sherwood Schwartz, American television screenwriter and producer, The Brady Bunch, Gilligan's Island. He dies at 94. That was in 2011. Milton Berle, American comedian and TV host, much loved and best known as Uncle Milty. Born in New York City, 1908, and he dies in 2002 in New York City. Alexander Hamilton, US founding father and first Secretary of the Treasury, 1786 to 1795. He was killed by Vice President Aaron Burr in a pistol duel. He was only 49 years of age. I mean, that was back in the days when men were men and movies really moved. Could you imagine the Secretary of the Treasury being taken out by the Vice President of the United States, and I don't know where they had it, but they just sort of fought it out with pistols. It somehow appeals to me. Ah, dear. 1804. Well, you don't want them hanging around, do you? No. English King Richard the Lionheart, Crusader, he defeats the Saracens in Palestine in 1191. My relatives were there. The first televised tennis match in 1926. Louis B. Mayer, American TV producer and creator of the star system. Good. I believe in the star system. Nothing works quite so well, in fact, in show business. He was born in Minsk, the Russian Empire. He died in 57, but born in 1884. Stan Zemanek. I knew Stan. Stan used to do work for me when I was at 5DN. He was in America, and in America, he was kind of like a roving reporter. He did work for, I think it was 2UE at the time. And we plugged in on that, and he would do a report from the United States for us not every morning, but in the morning once a week. It was very good. He came back and he did a kind of he did Beauty and the Beast on Channel 7, I think. I think it was Channel 7. And he did a nighttime program for 2 years, I remember. I do remember it because he pinched my theme. No one had used my theme, but he was using it. He stole it. But I don't mind. I like Stan. Stan's a monarch. He dies on this day in 2007. He was born in 1947. And Josiah Wedgwood, English pottery designer and manufacturer, 1730. Some of the things for which we remember the day. I hope it's going to be a nice one for you. I really do. The South Australian government, that is to say, we the people, are going to spend $500,000 on creating facilities in the parklands. Have you heard about this, Pete? No. Huh? Facilities in the parklands for Indigenous people travelling from the outback. But really, that's not the story. Not the story. I have been told that it's been created to move Aboriginal people from North Terrace and from Hindley Street and from West Terrace and all around to an area where they can presumably, I don't know, they're going to install Wi-Fi, toilet facilities. Oh, look, I understand the toilet facilities, but Wi-Fi? I don't know. I mean, I suppose I don't know enough about Aboriginal people or Wi-Fi for that matter. But these people, I assume, are going to be camping out in the parklands in a sort of tent city. Where are you going to get the electricity from? How are you going to do all of that? Oh, I suppose that's the $500,000. Now, if you have any doubt as to how this is going to end up looking, you can go and check out the Aboriginal Tent Embassy, which is in front of the old Parliament House in Canberra, which has been there since, I don't know, I don't know, it must have been the late 70s. A shanty town set in the parklands. Is that what you want? Is that what the City Council wants? Is that what the government wants for us? Of course, we'll pay the bill, because that's what we're going to get. It's not good for people, black or white, to live in the parklands. And why would you spend $500,000 on the idea? That's nuts. Nuts. Pauline Hanson wants an office for men. A minister in charge of men's affairs. Now that in itself is interesting to think about. Pauline, I know what you're getting at. It's ridiculous that we have some prejudice and some discrimination that's okay, even government-sponsored, with ministers for Indigenous affairs and ministers for women's affairs. It's all right to discriminate against white people and males, but you can't discriminate against black people and women. Why don't we just get rid of all discrimination? Huh? Treat everybody the same. And by the way, Pauline, the other thing, if you have, as it seems that you're wishing for, an office for men, you've got a minister, you've got advisors, you've got aides, you've got the whole entourage of people. He or she has a ministerial car and driver. We do not need all that expense. And remember, all that expense is times 2 because there's an opposition. You'd have to do the same for the opposition. Let's go the other way and in fact not have a minister for women, let alone a minister for men. There you go. In 60 seconds, I have saved the taxpayer well over $1 million a year. I must look that up because I don't exactly know what it costs to have a minister for anything, but I'd suspect it's way, way over $1 million a year. What can you say? Teaching the teachers. Now, who would have thought we'd get around to teaching the teachers? Mark Scott, who used to run the ABC, these days he's the Vice-Chancellor of Sydney University, he's handed down his report into why teachers are doing such a bad job. Lousy job, in fact. Me reading between the lines a bit here, but it could also be that the universities have done a really lousy job of preparing them for the classroom. Only 50% of people who take up teaching as a profession finish the course, and another 30% leave the profession within 5 years of graduating. But Jason Clare, the Federal Minister for Education, has embraced the report. I guess it's all right, he's going to have to pay for it. And he says he will implement it. It's about time somebody admitted that there was a problem, a big problem. It's good that for a start, for the first time, I see somebody talking about core subjects. Core subjects. Somehow, shock horror, our tertiary institutions have been turning out teachers who can't teach. Perhaps the teachers who are teaching the teachers can't teach. I mean, how far does it go back? Anyway, a greater emphasis on teachers being better prepared before they enter the classroom. And during that training period, there's a greater emphasis on subjects like, gee, how revolutionary, reading and writing and adding up, arithmetic. How about you don't graduate if you don't master the basics? This report doesn't say anything about the fact that all of this failure could have been laid at the feet of those people who got rid of the old school. The old school. Discipline. Correcting the homework. School teachers aren't respected anymore. And they say, well, without being insulting to teachers, because I think it's a very honourable profession. But teachers have got to understand, respectable. Teachers maybe these days aren't respectable anymore. Respect is something that you earn, it's not something you're given. Kids aren't stupid. There's somebody up there in the front of the class called Bob. It isn't Bob. His name is Mr. Robinson, or Mr. Jones, or as it was in my day, Sir. And also, Bob doesn't really know very much more than the class he's teaching. And the kids know that. And oh, by the way, he's not your mate. He's your teacher. The other thing that this report doesn't address is the emphasis on politics, which goes to the criticism I've often made that these people are not educated, they're indoctrinated. They concern themselves more with politics, left-wing politics, than they do with reading, writing and arithmetic. Well, surprise, surprise, it didn't work. All those crazy people who chucked the baby out with the bathwater, they turned the system upside down. When it did work, do you remember when kids were taught how to sound out the words? No, it wasn't modern. Didn't matter that it worked. Didn't matter that it worked well for generations. It just wasn't modern. So now it was word recognition from here on in. The education reformers, modern thinkers who wrecked the system, will not be criticised, and certainly we will not be getting an apology from the trendies. I somehow don't think that this report, while I welcome it, it probably cost a lot of money, and it points out the bleeding obvious. But the truth of the matter is, you can't put toothpaste back in a tube. It's going to take generations to fix the problem in our schools. And yes, it's a good idea to start with the way in which we are training the teachers of tomorrow. The state vision of the voice here in Adelaide is apparently causing confusion, if you haven't heard. So they're going to put it off for 6 months. Yep, put it off for 6 months. This is the state-based legislated model of the voice. How would that confuse anyone? Keep in mind it was rushed through state parliament with an opposition that, well, wasn't too numerous on the ground, but they didn't seem to put up too much of an objection to the idea. Rushed through state parliament as a sort of a template which would show us all that there was nothing to fear from a yes vote for the voice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not confused, but I am ashamed that nationally we could waste $400 million on something which is so divisive and racist and so useless. My suspicion is that the state government under Peter Malinowskis began to see the confusion that was starting to emerge. Not because of his legislation, but because of the voice. So they have delayed the setting up of their state-based voice because they don't want to frighten the horses. Confusion? 1,000 different communities. 280 different languages. A state voice and a federal voice, all saying something different in a different language. Yes, Premier? Yes? Perhaps confusion is a good word and something to be avoided, perhaps. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow we will be back. Look forward to talking to you then. I'm Jeremy Cordo. Peter Clayton and I wish you a good day. Believe in yourself, and bye for now.